Okay, welcome to Introduction to Flash, Week 3, Spring 2013 at Santa Rosa Junior College. Today we are going to be discussing symbols, using the symbols in the library. But before we get into that, I want to address any questions that you may have before we get started. So Richie has a question: how do we get to the homework grades? So on the Flash web animation homepage, you see it says right here, grades online 5422. You click on that link and you put your username and password, your Kate username and password, and it will take you to the grades. Now, the only grade that you would have at this point is the pre-quiz, the getting started quiz. But you should be able to see the grade for that assignment. Today is the deadline for turning in homework number 1. It is Wednesday, so by Friday you should see the grades posted for that homework assignment. And in addition, there was a question posted to the forum concerning how you will see the assignments that people created. And I did address that question in an email, but the short version of the answer is that I create a gallery for every assignment that you complete. Unfortunately, the Kate server does not support Flash files posted in a gallery. Instead, from the Flash web animation page, where it says additional support, you see it says student work examples. And right here is where you will see the gallery for each of the homework assignments. And I showed this on the first class and the second class. As of Friday, it will now list Spring 2013 semester galleries. And you'll see a link to the homework 1 gallery for this class. Any other questions? Okay, so if there are no other questions, we will first take a look at what has been submitted up until now for homework number 1. So I've launched Bridge, which is an application that ships with the Creative Suite. And really what Bridge is designed to do is to collect various file types and allow them to display in a preview window. So these are the SWF files that I received as of 9 o'clock this morning. Hopefully many more will be coming in before midnight tonight. But just so you can get a quick view of some of the files that have been submitted as your first homework assignment, which is a static file type. In other words, you were not required to create any animation. As a matter of fact, I suggested that you don't, and I also suggested that you didn't use gradients or imported any items. The idea of this assignment was that you would just use the drawing tools to experiment with the Flash program. So here we see some really nice, this is a really nice quality piece of work here. And I can click on it. I should be able to, maybe it doesn't work the way pictures work. Photos, I'd just be able to click and zoom in on it. But it doesn't look like I can do that with this file. But you can see some use of the Vine tool, which tool is that? Let me get the name of it correct. It's the deco tool using vine fill. Yep. So we use some the vine fill to kind of create a wallpaper, and then the basic drawing tools, and just came out really nice. Nice job. We have a variety of other file types. Some of them are simpler than others. This one uses the basic drawing tools as well. This one is a nice scene with electric power lines and the river and whatnot. Just very pleasant 2D work. This one's very, this one I would say it has a lot of simplicity on the surface, but it's actually really, really well done. It's well done because of the way that shadows and texture were created by using variations of color. So while it may seem on the surface to be fairly simple, it's actually quite complex in its the depth that's created with just some simple colors. So Jane should be congratulated for that. Basic space scene. We always get a few space scenes every class. Super Mario Brothers. Very cute little scene. Basic drawing tools, again using the vine fill. Basic rectangles throughout, circles, rectangles. Also using the basic shape circles, line tools, paint bucket, very just a fundamental drawing. Yeah. Here we've got again a little bit of a texture that shows through here by using some darker colors layered on top of other colors, and you end up with additional texture even though it's in 2D. Now this one, as you see, has a little ninja warrior appearing, or maybe it's Harry Potter with the invisibility cloak. I don't know. But there is an animation that's occurring up here, and that certainly was not required for this assignment. Another example, and this is the third one, where the use of some subtle darker colors layered on top of other colors creates some nice shadow effects. That's a good approach to be using in working with 2D tools like Flash. Okay. Another basic drawing, castle scene. This one has a little bit of a hobbit house there. I would suggest for something like this, an example, something that can be done a little different, is to use the shape tools to roll your cursor over the shape and curve things a little bit more to create a little bit more realism in the picture. And finally, a little bit more of a texture showing up with additional shadows. This one done in grayscale. So those are the assignments that have been turned in as of this morning. Any questions about the specifics of the assignment that's due as of midnight tonight? Okay, so Richie has no questions. Other people, if you want to, one thing I would like to suggest is that no, there was no caveat about making it look pretty. Pretty is good. I don't think I ever said do not make this look pretty. I said that I want you to focus on using at least 5 drawing tools. No, color, absolutely. There's no limitation on the use of color for this assignment. There was no requirement for text, and none was mentioned. So I want to talk to you folks who are online right now about how you can interact more effectively in the class. During class, above all of the names and below my name, you'll see there are a bunch of icons. So there's the smiley face icon, which has a whole bunch of sub-icons. And I want to bring your attention to the slower, faster icon that are available in that list. It's important for me that if I cover something too slowly, thank you, Richie. If I cover something too slowly, or if I cover it too quickly, that you ask me to slow down or speed up by using the slower, faster. And in the same vein, if something is confusing, please use those icons to express to me what's going on for you. The other thing is if you have a question, you can always raise your hand. And also, if I ask you a question, it makes it a lot easier if you respond by using the check mark for yes and the X for no. Does everybody understand that? Okay, well, I know Anna and Richie do. Thank you, Christy and Linda. And G. Okay, so I don't know where maybe Chris and Linda stepped out for a minute. So it's important that you use those tools because then I am clear that you're understanding, and it just makes it a little bit more interactive for us. So I'm going to close out of Bridge, and I'm going to bring up Flash. And we're going to talk about symbols in the library. First, we're going to talk about symbols. There are 3 different kinds of symbols that are available to create inside of Flash. Now, when you create a symbol, it automatically shows up in the library. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a symbol on stage right now, and as soon as I turn it into a symbol, it will automatically be in the library. I'm going to show you the library by clicking on this icon that is available in Classic View. And you see I already have a few symbols inside of it. Well, that's the wrong library. Let me find this library. Yes, this is the library. I'm going to call this save as temp, because I'm not going to be keeping this file. So I've already got 3 different symbols in the library. One of them, and you can see there are 2 different icons. But I said that there were 3 different symbol types, so shouldn't I see 3 icons? The answer is yes. That's why I'm going to now create a 3rd symbol. I'm going to choose the rectangle primitive tool. I'm going to draw a little box on the stage, and I'm going to curve the corners of that box. And I'm going to now take that box and hit the F8 key, or I can choose Modify Convert to Symbol. And I'm going to choose BTN Yellow as my symbol name. And where it says Type, I'm going to change that to Button. Okay? And for now, all of the rest of the stuff that's showing up in the advanced panel is not necessary for us. I'm just going to click on OK. Now, all of a sudden, my library has a third symbol icon right here. So I have ball, and I'm going to rename this, by the way. I'm going to rename this MC ball. And this one I'm going to rename GR Gull. So now I have 4 symbols. Each symbol is starting with the name of the symbol type in shorthand. In other words, this top one, BTN, is a button symbol. These next two, GR, are graphic symbol types. And finally, the last one, MC, is a movie clip. So these are the 3 symbol types that I'm going to explain to you in great detail over the next couple of minutes. So I created that symbol, and the way I created that symbol is simply I created a shape, and I went to the Modify menu and chose Modify Convert to Symbol. So the process of creating the symbol is pretty easy. But what we want to talk about now is what is the difference between these 3 symbol types. Well, let's start that conversation with the graphic symbol. The graphic symbol is the most basic of the 3 symbol types, and it can contain graphics, artwork, bitmaps that you import. Basically, graphic symbols are useful to interact with your animation, and they do not have certain properties that you'll find in other symbol types. So, pay careful attention to what I'm going to show you here. I'm just typing in a little marker here for people to navigate directly to this later if they're going to watch. So I have this GR Gull on my stage, GR standing for graphic type. And I'm going to change the stage color by clicking on this color chip, make it a blue. Too dark, how about I make it a little lighter? Too iridescent, how about I click here and bring this way down to a very gradual, there we go. So I have this gull. Now, if I want this gull to animate and just kind of bop along the stage here, what I can do is I can right-click on the main timeline and choose Create Motion Tween, and then move that gull to maybe there. Okay? And maybe stretch this out a little further, stretch my timeline out. So now we see he goes from there to there. Of course, his feet aren't moving, and that's perfectly fine because we didn't set him up to do that. But let's at least make him bop a little bit. So I'm clicking my cursor every couple of frames and moving the object as he goes along the stage. Okay, so now what we see is this. Okay, so that is an example of a graphic symbol that animates on the main timeline. Why that is important is that that is one of the characteristics of a graphic symbol. It cannot animate in any way except on the main timeline or on the timeline of another symbol that it may be nested inside of. Okay? When I select this graphic symbol and look at the Properties panel, you'll see there's very little I can really do with the graphic symbol here. Right? I can swap it for another symbol. In the Position panel, I can change its position. Right? In the styling, I could change its brightness. And in the styling, I can also change its tint. I could also change its alpha or its transparency. But that's really all I can do with it. Finally I can loop it. Okay? And you can see there's one feature in here that you won't see in other symbol types, and that is where it says looping options. You see it says single frame. And then, and the other actually single frame you will see. You won't see this where it says first, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But basically the graphic symbol type is just the most basic symbol that there is. It animates on the main timeline, and it has a fairly limited repertoire. If I get rid of this element from the stage, and I go to the library, and I look at the button, I'm going to double-click on the button because I want to create some additional states for the button. Because what the button is a symbol that has only 4 keyframes, and those frames are the up state of the button, the over state of the button, the down state of the button, and the hit state of the button. But a button can be more complicated than even a graphic symbol. And the reason that it can be more complicated is because, let me make a quick change here. Copy this, paste it, and paste it. There we go. So the thing about a button is that I can go into the inside of a button, and I can adjust certain elements to that button, like maybe I can put a glow around the button, and when somebody rolls over the button, I can add I can add filters to the button that I wouldn't be able to add to a what is it called? A graphic symbol. And then let's say on the down state, I can add the glow again, but I can also add a drop shadow. So what you'll see here is when I go to my library and I take that button symbol and drop it on the stage, and I test that button by choosing Control Enable Simple Buttons. When I roll over this button, oh no, we're not seeing it there. We're going to have to go into test movie mode to see it. Sorry, I know what the problem is. I know what the problem is, and I'll fix that problem right now. I have to go back to the library and get rid of that and get the button yellow on the stage. There we go. Okay. Control Enable Simple Buttons. So here's this button, and I'll zoom in a little bit on it so you can see it better. So even though this button is only taking up a single frame on the timeline, when I roll over it, you can see the glow changes. When I click on it, you can see it takes a drop shadow. So it acts the way you would expect a button to act on a web page. On the different states of the button, it appears differently. And so one of the big primary differences of the button symbol compared to the graphic symbol type is the button symbol in the Properties panel. You can see not only do you have control over the position of the element and whether or not you want to have brightness, tint, or alpha added or subtracted. Advanced, by the way, is just a combination of those three. But you have other additional aspects that you can control with the button symbol. You can change the blending so it multiplies with the background behind it, or so it's darker, or so it's lighter on the screen. You know, you have a whole host of display controls that are not available for the graphic symbol type. Okay? In addition, you can track that button as a menu item or as a button, and that's something we will cover further on down the line. But finally, and to some people most importantly, you can add filters to the button. So I could click here and I could set it up that the button is blurred, and so it shows up like this, and then when somebody rolls over it, maybe it comes back to being in focus or something like that. But you can add various filters to that symbol type. And the very last thing that you can do is you can give this button an instance name. In other words, by giving this instance of the button a name, I can use ActionScript programming to modify the appearance of this button. Okay? So those are some major differences between a graphic symbol and a button symbol. Finally, the third symbol type is a movie clip. So I'm going to go over to my library, and that's not my library. There's my library. I'm going to go over to my library, and I see I have this object right here, MC Ball. Now here's the interesting thing about MC Ball. If I double-click on this element, I'm inside of the timeline of this object. Okay? So we see there's the object, and notice my timeline only has a single frame because we're not on the main timeline anymore. We're inside of the timeline of the ball. So what does this all mean? I'll show you. What it means is that, here, I'm trying to resize this a little bit. What it means is that I can create an animation with this object. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this object, and I'm turning this object into a symbol inside of the symbol. So we're inside of the ball, but then I took the ball and turned it into a symbol also. It looks like I'm already getting complicated, but aside from that specific thing, what I'm just trying to get you to see is the difference between the movie clip, the graphic symbol, and the button in terms of their characteristics. So just stay with me here for a second. Don't worry too much about the fact that I put a symbol inside of a symbol. Just take a look at what I can do with a movie clip that I can't do with other symbol types. So I want to say maybe this. Okay. I opened up the Motion Presets panel, which is part of the set of presets that are available inside of Flash. And what I did was I created, just with one click of a button, this nice little animation of a ball bouncing. Okay? Now here's where it gets really interesting. I'm going to take this button off the stage for right now, and I'm going to put the gull on the stage for a second, make it smaller, and then I'm going to go back to the library and take the MC Ball and put it on the stage. Okay, I'm going to size it down as well. Okay, now there's only one frame here on the main timeline, only a single frame. But watch what happens when I test this movie by going Control Test Movie. the ball is bouncing. How is it that the ball is not only bouncing, but is continuing to bounce? Linda is thinking, why isn't the gull jumping? Well, why isn't the gull jumping? I took off the gull's animation. The gull is just an object sitting on the stage. As a matter of fact, let's go inside of that gull, and there we're inside of the gull. We're not on the main timeline anymore. I'll do it in a different way so it's less confusing. I'll go to the library, I'll go to the gull, and now we're inside of the gull. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, take that gull and turn it into a symbol, just because I want to be able to make this gull jump along his own timeline. So now he's a symbol nested inside of a symbol. I can right-click on the timeline, and I can say create motion tween. And now I can move him over to here, stretch this out that many frames, go to frame 10, make him jump up, go to frame 20, make him jump down, go to frame 30, make him go up, go to frame 40, make him go down, and then go to frame 50. Okay? So now the gull does bounce, right? But when I go to this main scene, and let me get that gull. When I go to this main scene, I only have a single frame. Now let's take a look at what I've got going here. Here's my main scene. It says scene 1. On scene 1, I have two objects. I have this gull. It says right here, this is an instance of GR gull, and it's a graphic symbol type. On this side, I've got this ball, which is an instance of MC ball, which is a movie clip type. So here's my question. Why, when I test this movie, do we see, or maybe it's crazy for me to think that you can answer the question why, but what are you seeing happen when I test this one frame movie in when I do a test movie where you're actually outputting the SWF file? Why is it that we're seeing the ball bounce, looping over and over again, but we're not seeing the gull move at all? What can possibly be going on here? Okay, so the gull isn't a movie clip. We're right about that, because it's an animation inside of a single frame. Well, that's kind of true. But why is it that the ball is moving? We're seeing the ball, but we're not seeing the gull. And yes, it is only a single frame. But why is the ball animating and not the gull? And that's where I stump you and tell you it's because an MC, no, it's close, because an MC or a movie clip has what's called an independent timeline. Now it's not this animation inside of this movie clip is not a one-frame animation. It's 75 frames long, right? The gull, let's make the gull's animation 75 frames long just so we can have the same scenario. Both of these animations are 75 frames long inside of their own timelines. But when I put them on the main scene, notice there's only a single frame, yet the ball continues to play and the gull just sits there. What's happening there is the fundamental difference between a movie clip and a graphic symbol. A graphic symbol has to have the same number of frames on the main timeline as there are inside of that graphic symbol. In other words, if this animation takes 75 frames to complete, then when I put that symbol on the main timeline, that main timeline is going to need 75 frames. Whereas a movie clip is completely independent. A movie clip can animate without any additional frames on the main timeline. So watch what happens now when I add frames to this main timeline by selecting Modify Timeline. No, Insert, I guess. I never do it this way. Insert Timeline Frame. So now there are 75 frames on the main timeline, and we see when I test this movie, both animations are occurring now. Because a graphic symbol needs the number of frames on the main timeline to equal the number of frames inside of the animation of the symbol itself. Does that make at least some sense? The main thing to walk away from here is that movie clip, independent timeline, graphic symbol, number of frames on the main timeline equals the number of frames necessary to animate it inside of the symbol. Those are the main differences. Another difference is that a movie clip also can receive an instance name just like a button can, but a graphic symbol cannot. And a movie clip can also get filters put on it. So I can put a drop shadow on that, and now when I test it, we have that nice drop shadow that goes along with that movie clip. Whereas the gull does not have a drop shadow. Okay, so those are the three different symbol types: graphic, button, and movie clip. And we already looked inside of the library, and we saw that each of these symbol types is represented by a different icon. Okay, well, Anna, it's not really a question of understanding why a movie clip has its own independent timeline. It's kind of like an immutable law of Flash. Movie clips, you can create movie clips, and they have their own independent timelines, so regardless of how many frames are on any other timeline, that movie clip by default will play on whichever timeline that movie clip symbol is put on. Okay, it's just one of those immutable laws of Flash. So right now we're looking at the library, and as I said, we see that there's the three different icons representing the three different symbol types. And that's also, it's a good idea to name your symbols BTN. All buttons start with BTN, all graphics start with GR, and all movie clips start with MC. This way they will list themselves in order. Okay, I did some other things here that we don't really have to worry about right now. But when I create symbols, that's how I name them. You can also see down at the bottom, you can create a new symbol from the library. You can also create a folder and then maybe put your symbols, if you have many, many symbols and you want to organize them by symbol types, you can put all of those symbols in a folder, and that will keep them organized like that. You can also get the properties of a symbol from this icon right here. It shows me that this is MC Ball and it's a movie clip. right? And then you can finally throw a symbol in the recycle bin. On the top right-hand corner, you can see you can also access the library options up here. So for example, if I take MC Ball, I can choose Properties, and again I can see that it's this symbol type. I can also change it to a different symbol type if I wanted to, right from this window. Okay, I could also play the object right within the window. I can also choose unused items and get rid of them. Does extending the timeline slow the animation? Yes, it does. The more frames you have, the slower it's going to be. Okay? So anytime you create a symbol, that symbol always shows up in the library. Okay? So the process of creating a symbol, like I showed you, is pretty straightforward. Let's see if I can find some examples that I'd want you to see here. Okay, let's see what we have in our library. Oh, these are elements that I've created. I'm trying to find one other thing for us. Just give me a second. Okay, I think I can do it with this. So, one of the things that I think it's pretty interesting to see is when you create a scene. In this case, I'm going to close the library here. In this case, I'm going to review with you what we have on the stage and how all of this is playing out. So what we have here is we have two layers on the stage. And the first layer, and I'm going to actually rebuild this so you can see it, but I'm going to first review what there is currently there. So I have this layer called background, which has an instance of GR snowy bitmap. On top of that, I have this snowstorm. Okay? So how would I construct something like this? I'm going to take everything off the stage, and I'm going to get rid of one of the layers. Actually, yeah, we'll just call this background for now. So I have, and I'm going to get rid of these additional frames as if I was just starting, but I had already, not clear, whoops, delete, remove, thank you. So I've got a single frame element, but what I've already done here is I've changed the background color of my stage. So I have the workspace selected, there's my stage. It doesn't really have to be that color, but so I'll change it to something a little less gray. And I've already taken some objects and converted them to symbols. Let's say I wanted to have a photograph turned into a symbol. Let's say I wanted a winter scene. Okay, I could go out to a web page and say winter, just the word winter, and go to images and take this image and right-click on it and save the image as winter. I wanted to save it as winter. Here we go, winter. Then, if I go to Flash, and I say import, I could go File, Import to Stage, and it prepares Flash for importing. And I go to my desktop, and I see winter, and I click on OK. Now clearly it's way bigger than my stage, right? So what I can do is I can size it down by holding the Shift key, and there's my stage, there's my object, right? And I'm going to keep on sizing it down till it fits more or less on top of the stage. Now I can zoom back in to full size. So I've imported this image, maybe make it a teeny bit bigger so I don't see the gray on the outside. Okay, and now I can take that image and choose Modify, Convert to Symbol. And since this is just going to be a background, I'll call it GR Winter Scene. Okay, so that object is on my stage called Winter Scene. Okay, what would I do with an object like this? Well, I might fade that object in. So I'm just going to hide the object for a second, and if I was going to fade it in, then I would be fading it in from black. So there's my stage. Yes, it automatically goes into the library. Like I said earlier, when you convert anything into a symbol, it automatically shows up in the library. Okay? And in this case, the library would be winter.fla. And there we see GR Winter Scene in the library. And it looks like I saved it as a movie clip, not a graphic symbol. Now, that's not a problem because I can change it as I showed you earlier. And I'm going to leave this library panel open so it doesn't continue to open and close on me. Okay? So notice, here is my winter scene on my stage. I can go to my Properties panel, change it to a graphic symbol. But to completely make sure that it's a graphic symbol, it is a bitmap, and I'll explain to you a little bit more in a second. If we want to make sure that this winter scene is a graphic symbol, we have to also go into the library and change its symbol properties to a graphic by right-clicking and choosing Symbol Properties and then changing the type. In other words, here I am in the library. I right-click, I choose Properties, I choose Symbol Properties, I choose Type, and I change it to the symbol type that I want, and click on OK. So Richie asks, what if it is a bitmap? Well, this is a bitmap, as a matter of fact. A bitmap is a JPEG or a PNG or a GIF. Those are all forms of bitmaps. What a bitmap is an object made of pixels. So any file type that is made of pixels is a bitmap file type. But what we see is when I import an element from outside of Flash like a photograph, it brings that element into the library and has a different symbol type. I mean, a different icon. Notice this icon looks like a tree, and it's called winter.jpg. But when I turned this into a symbol called GR Winter Scene, what I did was I created a container to hold this image. Okay? It's important to understand that I cannot throw this image away now. If I threw this image away, that picture would be gone out of the inside of this symbol type. In other words, the symbol is just a container. It's what you put into the symbol that matters. In this case, what I did is I took this picture and I converted it to a symbol by choosing Modify Convert to a Symbol. And what that does is puts a container around the object. It puts the object inside a container. Okay? But if I got rid of this object, then the container would be empty. Okay? So, but that's not that useful right now for understanding the subtleties of symbols. What we want to understand is, first of all, why I would take a photograph and use it as a symbol. Why not just leave it as a photo? It's because when it turns into a symbol, I can do certain things like motion tween it. I cannot motion tween something that is not a symbol. Because what I want to do here is I want to motion tween this. I want to take this object and have it go from an opacity of 0 to an opacity of 100%. So I'm going to select the first frame of this object, and I'm going to go to Color Effects. I'm going to choose Alpha and set the alpha to 0. And then out here on the end, I'm going to select that object and change its alpha to 100%. And then I'm going to hold the, let's see if that's correct. No, that's wrong. Come on. There, let me hold on 1 second here. No, that's not what I want to do. I'm trying to just do one little technique here. I never remember this keyboard shortcut until I get to the end. Good. So what I did was I held the Shift key down and added additional frames. Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a fade in from black effect. And this is what we see. It fades in, and then it stays there. So one way that you would use a graphic symbol is you would bring in a photo and then convert that photo to a graphic symbol. And then when you put that graphic symbol on the main timeline, you can have it fade in and stay faded in. Another thing that's unique about graphic symbols is what you can do when you have a graphic symbol that has its own timeline. So basically, I just double-clicked on this snowflake. This snowflake is inside of another symbol called GR Snowstorm. And GR Snowstorm is simply the process of having this snowflake drop down. As a matter of fact, I'll build one for you so you can see it. Instead of modify, play what again? Play the timeline? Here. Okay. What you see here is that first frame is completely its alpha is set to 0. Well, it's not fading jerky. It's only what's happening when you're seeing it third hand. You know, I'm sharing my screen. So when one is app sharing, you're not really seeing it the way it plays on a browser. You're seeing it kind of third hand. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, okay, so we see that this fades in. But now let's say I want to have a bunch of snowflakes appearing on this stage. So here's my snowflake right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a snowstorm. And instead of saying modify convert to symbol, I'm going to say insert new symbol. And I'm going to call this GR Snowstorm 2, since I already have a snowstorm. And I'm going to make sure that this is a graphic symbol. And I'll click on OK. Now I have an empty stage because I'm inside of the graphic snowstorms timeline. Right? Notice there's nothing on this timeline. I inserted a new symbol. And like I said before, what a symbol is a container. Well, right now, when I say insert new symbol, I'm essentially saying create an empty container. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this snowflake, which is also a graphic symbol, and put it inside of this empty container, also known as the symbol GR Snowstorm 2. I drop it on my timeline, and I then right-click on my timeline and say Create Motion Tween, and I'll stretch this out to about 25 frames. And I'll take this object and I'll hold the Shift and arrow key and make this go south. I'll resize it by holding the Shift key and essentially making it go down to about that size. And I'll also change the alpha so it disappears. So what you see in this symbol's timeline is the following. It drops down and disappears, just like a snowflake melting. Okay? Now remember, the way I did that is I had this shape, which is turned into a symbol. I took that shape and I put it inside of this other symbol that I created that had absolutely nothing in it. Okay? So basically what I'm seeing is I'm seeing that snowflake drop. Where this gets interesting is here. I'm going to take this frame on the snowstorm layer and move it over to where the opacity of the background is at 100%. I'm going to lock the background so I don't accidentally put things on it. Then I'm going to take this graphic snowstorm symbol and I'm going to put it on the stage right over here. And then when I play this, what we'll see is we'll see that element continuing to drop down like that. Right? Now, there's a couple of things about this that I have to fix. Remember what I said earlier. A graphic symbol needs to have the same number of frames on its timeline as there are on the stage. Since this snowflake, I'm going to have the snowflake appear on frame 15. And then it goes to frame 75. That means this snowflake is on the stage for 60 frames. But if I double-click on this snowflake, we see its animation only lasts for 25 frames. I want it to last the same amount of time. Okay, so I am going to reposition the whole thing, move it up a little bit. Okay, and move this endpoint up as well. Have to get the right tool to do it. Okay, this is being a little picayune here. That's all right. I know where to do it from. I am inside of the graphic symbol. That's fine. Let's see. Here, I'm going to make this a bit shorter. That's what I need to do. Hold it. I'm holding the, selecting the timeline. And I just want to shorten this down a bit. I'm going to zoom out a little bit to do this. Okay. Basically what I'm trying to do here is make the animation essentially fit the size of my stage. Okay. So it starts up at the top and it goes down to the bottom. Go away, kitty. Okay. Now I'm on the main timeline. Let's take a look at what happens now. The snowflake appears at frame 15, and since this snowflake lasts... Hold on a second. Cat, go out. Cat is harassing me. No, you're not part of the Flash class. Goodbye. Okay. So, the snowflake starts on frame 15 and goes to frame 75, which is the same number of frames as is inside of this snowflake's animation. So watch what happens. The snowflake drops, just like that. When I test this, we see the snowflake come down and disappear. Now maybe, to make this a little better, I'm going to go into this snowstorm and let's see, this is a snowstorm, yeah. I'm going to have the animation at that point be a little higher than it currently is. Animation right there. Right, why am I not getting that symbol? There we go. I'm going to kick up the alpha to about 80 there, and then down here, the very last frame, the alpha goes down to 0. I have to kind of find, it's really hard to set your alpha to 0 when you can't see the object that you're trying to select, but I got it now. So now let's take a look at what happens when I publish this. The snowflake comes down and it disappears right just about when it hits the water. The only problem with this is that there's only one snowflake, and the other problem is that it keeps on looping. Well, I'm going to take care of that right now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with the looping by actually writing my first action script for the semester. AS. For ActionScript, I created a new layer. I take the keyframe from that new layer and move it to the very end. I right-click on that keyframe, or command-click for Mac users, choose Action, and type in the word stop, lowercase, with an open parenthesis, a close parenthesis, and a semicolon. Now when I watch this, I will only see it play once. Fade in, and the snowflake drops. So, now why does it go back to the top again? That's only because the playhead is going back to the beginning. But what we are going to see, though, is how can we set this up so we've got multiple snowflakes appearing on the stage. And that is really cool. Watch. I'm going to select the snowflake. I'm going to go copy, and I'm going to paste it. And I'll just position it over there. And I'll paste it again. Command-C for copy, Command-V for paste. And I'll copy it again. Command-C for copy, Command-V for paste. I'm going to continue to copy multiple copies of the snowflake. Command-C, Command-V. Once or twice more. And 2 more, and we're good. Okay, so let's take a look what happens now. I've got 8 different copies of this snowflake, and they're all falling at the exact same time. Right? That's a problem. So let's figure out how we can change that. And I'm going to get rid of my ActionScript layer here because I want to see this continue to loop just so I can show you what it looks like when these snowflakes are falling at the same time. They fall as if they're uniform, which is not at all what we want. So this is the one thing that a graphic symbol can do better than a movie clip symbol. I'm going to take the first instance of this graphic symbol. And notice where it says looping. I'm going to say first 10. And then the next one, I'm going to choose I'm going to say first 5. And then the next one, I'm going to say first 3. And then the next one, I'm going to say first, we'll leave that at 1. The next one, I'm going to say first 20. And you'll see what this means in a second. The next one, I'll say first 6. Next one, first 22. And the next one, first 8. So what I've done is I have, even though each of these animations have 60 frames, I'm saying this instance of the snowflake is going to, this instance of the snowstorm, because this is GR snowstorm 2, this instance of the snowstorm is not going to start on frame 1. It's going to start on frame 10 of its own animation. This instance is going to start on frame 5, and this instance is going to start on frame 3. So what you end up with is something that looks more realistic. The snowflakes are falling at different times, right? And if I moved this, if let's say I get rid of my, because for the purposes of this example, it would be better to remove this tween of the background scene and have the snowflake start right from the very beginning and shorten down this whole animation to 60 frames, which is equal to the number of frames on the snowflakes timeline. So let's now make sure that we can see this background, which we'll have to turn this alpha on. Okay, and now let's see what we end up with. So the snowflakes drop, and they're dropping in a random fashion. So the advantage of a graphic symbol is the fact that when you're working with a graphic symbol, you can select each one of those graphic symbols and have it start its animation at a different point on its timeline. Okay? So we see how each one of these graphic symbols starts at a different frame within its timeline. Questions about the graphic symbol and how you can adjust the graphic symbol's timeline to make it look more realistic. No questions. Well, thank you, Anna, for typing in that way. I see a check mark. Just have to try it. Yeah, it's definitely something that you want to continue to try in order to make some of these things make sense for you. Okay, but also it is useful to just kind of notice that when I double-click on a symbol, it shows me the inside of that symbol's timeline right there, right? And when I double-click on the symbol, what I'm doing is I'm editing that symbol in place. In other words, I'm editing the symbol and seeing how it's going to work with the main timeline. Even though I'm not on the main timeline, I can see how it's going to work, right? Another thing that's interesting about when you create symbols has to do with the registration point of a symbol. Let's say I take this movie clip, this graphic symbol, which is essentially the object dropping, the snowflake dropping. And I want to do something like make that symbol rotate. So what I can do is with that symbol, actually with the timeline selected, I can go to the Properties panel and choose Rotation one time. And now you're going to see all of my snowflakes rotate. But notice, where are those snowflakes rotating from in relationship to themselves? Where is the pivot point of that snowflake? Anybody? I think we're going to have a group pot of coffee before class. It's the afternoon hour right after lunchtime effect. So the question is, that snowflake symbol, it is rotating, but where is the pivot point of that snowflake symbol when it rotates? The center, that's correct. It's rotating from the center. And what that has to do with, thank you, what that has to do with is what's called the registration point of the object. So I'm zoomed in on this snowflake, and you see there's this white dot in the center of the snowflake. That's called the registration point. The only time I can alter the registration point is if I have the Free Transform tool selected on my object. So there's my object. I have the Free Transform tool. Now I can take that white registration point and move it. And now that I moved it up to the top corner of the snowflake, watch how it rotates now. It's a completely different rotation because it's rotating around the registration point, which is now in the top left-hand corner. So it's going down and then back around and down and around. So the registration point controls how an object rotates when you use the rotation tool on a timeline. Okay? So what I can do now is I can select this object again with my Free Transform tool. I have to find where my registration point went. That's the tricky part. Go to my Free Transform tool, and it's kind of hidden up here now. Oh, there it is. And I drag that center point and move it back to the center. And all of the registration points have now been moved to the center. So now it's spinning from its center again. Okay? So that's the registration point. Now, I'm following along with comments, concepts that are being presented in Chapter 3 of the book. I'm doing it my own way, but you know, you should be happy about that, because otherwise, this way you're getting a variation of information covering the same topics. The next topic is creating a blank symbol, and I already showed you how to do that. Creating a blank symbol, like I said, is when you create a container by choosing Insert, New Symbol, choose a symbol type, and you put something inside of that symbol. Because that symbol by itself is empty. There is nothing inside of the symbol when you create a blank symbol. It's putting the artwork inside of that symbol that makes that symbol have content. Okay? So just be aware of that. Now, the rest of the next few pages in the chapter talks about stuff that I already covered. Positioning your elements inside of a symbol, you simply drag them there and adjust your elements inside of there. I mentioned that, okay, I'll get to your question, Linda, in just a second. I mentioned that you can edit a symbol in place by double-clicking on it, and then it puts you inside of that symbol with the stage showing in the background. That is called editing in place, and the advantage of that, like I said earlier, is that you can drag the timeline, you can drag the keyframes in the, you can drag the playback head in the timeline and see how it's going to be interacting with the main timeline. That's called editing in place. If you wanted to edit directly on a symbol, the way you do that is several ways. You can right-click on that symbol and choose Edit instead of Edit in place. And then it puts you inside of that symbol's timeline without the main scene showing up behind it. So there's editing symbols in place and simply editing. For most cases, editing in place is probably more useful. Now, Linda was asking, could I change the registration point on individual symbols? Okay, so I don't think you can, actually. I'm going to have to put that question on my docket to answer for next class. I am pretty sure the registration point can, well, let me see here. Let me see. Oh yeah, maybe that'll do it. No, that just changes the location. I have the free transform tool. No, it's just changing the object's location. Let's see. Yeah, it's still spinning from its center. So, Linda, I'm going to have to do a little research on that one. If you renamed each object, no. So this is the beginner point of Flash. Graphic symbols do not have instance names that are individual names. These are objects that are referencing the object in the library. If I change this object, it changes the object in the library. So if I change the color of this, it's actually me going in and making a change to the color. Notice that affected every single one of them. Okay? So in this first couple of weeks, the main thing you want to kind of become aware of is the difference between what we did first and second class, where we were dealing with shapes and object level shapes and broken apart shapes, and all of those things you can change individually. But once you turn something into a symbol, then the symbol is like the master copy in the library. If you try to change one element, one instance of that symbol, if you try to change it by double-clicking and choosing Edit, it changes all of them. Okay? The only way you can change an instance is by going to the Properties panel, and you have a very limited number of things that you can change about it. So for example, this one snowflake, I can change its tint. That's not going to affect any of the other snowflakes, because the Properties panel is applying that change to this instance of the master without touching the master. But there's no place in this Properties panel that I can choose to change the registration point. So I'm 98% sure that if you change the registration point, you're changing it for all of the instances. Okay? Okay, let's see what other things I want to make sure that you cover. Duplicating symbols. One thing you can do, let's say you wanted to have, and this is kind of what Linda was kind of saying, instead of renaming each object, one of the things that you can do is you can maybe make a second object which has a different registration point. So let's say I kind of already did that. Here's my GR snowstorm number 1. If I take its registration point and move it maybe out over to here, and then go inside and change the color of that object as well, then I can have, oh, why did it do it to both of them? Oh, because inside is the flake. Got it. Okay, I'm going to undo that. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm not going to change the color because they're referencing yet another symbol. But what I did do is I did change the registration point. So now if I take GR Snowstorm 1 and put it on the stage, okay, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it only a little more complicated just to show you how this whole thing works. I'm duplicating the symbol. I'm going to duplicate this flake by right-clicking on it and choose Duplicate Flake. And then on this flake, I'm going to change its color to a little greener. That's too blue. Okay, that's good. Okay, and now I'm going to go to GR Snowstorm 1, and I'm going to swap out this symbol by selecting it. Come on, there we go. Graphic, and clicking on Swap, and swapping it for GR Flake Copy. Okay, so what I did was I duplicated a symbol by right-clicking on that symbol in the library. I made it a copy, and then this Snowstorm 2 was already a copy of this Snowstorm 1. I made sure that Snowstorm 2 had the copy of the snowflake inside of the snowstorm. And then on this Snowstorm 2, I changed the registration point by using the Free Transform tool and dragging that registration point up. So now not only are we going to see another color symbol, but we're also going to see, let's see, I wanted to make a copy of that. We're also going to see a different rotation of this symbol. And let's take a look at how those two bluer ones, those two bluer snowflakes, rotate differently than the other snowflakes. It's kind of hard to see. I'll slow it down a little bit here. Let me try one other thing. Let me put a stroke around this copy. Stroke color. Let's get a tool to use for our stroke. And that tool is the ink bottle. There we go. Kind of hard to get the strokes everywhere, but we're getting there. We have a nice orange stroke on most of it. Not all of it, but most of it. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the ink bottle and I'm applying a stroke to this GR Flake copy. Okay. Now I go to the GR Snowstorm, which has the GR Flake copy. I want to make sure that its registration point is way up in some funky location, which it is. Oh, I know what I didn't do. I didn't have this object rotate. So I have to Yeah, I have to get that object, and let me get that layer. There we go. And I set its rotation to 1 time counterclockwise. Okay, so now GR Snowstorm rotates counterclockwise. Its registration point, though, is near the top of the snowflake, so it's not going to rotate in a smooth circle. It's going to kind of bounce around a little bit. Whereas GR Snowstorm 2 has its registration in the center, so it's going to rotate around that center point, and it's going to do so in a clockwise manner. Let's see our two snowflakes going in opposite direction. Now you can see it much better. Okay, so do we see how the registration point changes the rotation, and how when you duplicate not a object, but not rename an object, but duplicate a symbol in the library, then you can get a lot more variation. Okay? Any questions about that? The rest of the chapter talks about text a little bit, and then organizing symbols in the library. I already showed you how to do that. Couple of last things that I can show you before we wrap it up, because we've been going for an hour and a half now without you guys taking a break, so I figured we'll just go for another 10-15 minutes and we can call it a day. So last things I want to show you is that here's my library. I showed you you can add folders earlier. You can also take symbols and move them to other libraries. So if I select a symbol, click on Move To, I can move to a new folder in this library. I can move to an existing folder within the library. Okay? Not that exciting, but that's stuff that you can do. Another thing that you can do from this library window is any other files that you have open, you can select assets from those other files and bring them into the stage. As soon as you bring that other element onto the stage, that symbol will then show up in the library as well. How do I save a symbols folder outside of Flash? You really can't. I mean, what a symbols folder is, it's a library that is attached to a Flash file. What you can do is you can you can import external libraries, but again, you can only import them from within Flash. If you're saying you've created a bunch of symbols and you want to be able to access them outside of Flash, like, how do you mean, for like Illustrator or something like that? How would you use them? Like as vector graphics, that kind of thing? In some other program? Oh, from one file to another, like I said, all you have to do is, I can open up any external Flash library from this file. I can go File, Import, Open External Library. So if I chose Import Open External Library, all I'd have to do is point to wherever I had any Flash files, and I could open that library and get access to any file, any symbols that are inside of that library. In this case, I happened to choose a library that didn't have anything inside of it. But by choosing Import open external library, I can, let me find a file that does have some stuff inside of it. So all of these symbols are actually in a different library, but I can get to that library by selecting File, Open External Library. And as soon as I start bringing those elements in, those elements are now part of this current library. Okay? In terms of how you can save a symbols folder outside of Flash, you really can't as far as I know. You'd have to simply select the element from within Flash and paste it into another program like Illustrator. You can also open a Flash file from Illustrator. So you can open the Flash file from Illustrator, but you can't save like the symbols folder as just like an assets folder that you can access easily. Okay? Okay, so what other things do I need to share with you having to do with symbols and whatnot? But this was just this was a little scene that I made where we saw several different types of animations. Here's the thing that you're going to want to remember as we go forward. Symbols are the types of elements that can have motion tweens attached to them. You can take a symbol and you can make it motion tween. You can take a shape and make it shape tween. But you cannot take a shape and make it motion tween. Okay? So for example, let's see if I can find some good example here. For example, just this ball. I take this ball and I copy it. I go File, New. I create a new file. And I paste that object here. It's simply a ball, right? Now, it's not even a symbol yet. Because of the fact that it's not a symbol, I cannot make it, if I right-click here and say Create Motion Tween, and then move this, why did it, oh, I see. It was actually a symbol. It showed up in my library as a symbol. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break it apart. Okay. So, I have this object on my stage. It's a shape. That's all it is. We can see right here in the Properties panel, it says Shape. If I right-click on that shape and choose Create Motion Tween, I get a message that says, this selected item cannot be tweened. You must convert this to a symbol in order to tween it. Okay? So if I wanted, though, to turn this into a shape tween, that I can do because it is a shape. I can say Create Shape Tween, and then I can add another keyframe here, and I can take this object and move it to there, and I essentially have what's very similar to a motion tween without a whole lot of the flexibility. But usually shape tweens are when you take shapes and have them become different shapes. But the point that I was making here is that once I turn this object into a symbol, then I can do motion tweens on it. So I'd go Modify, Convert to Symbol, and turn this into GR Ball, and I'm going to turn it into MC Ball for movie clip because it's more flexible. That I can then take and right-click and choose Create a Motion Tween. A shape I would not be able to do that with. Can the shape enlarge, reduce along the path? Sure, a shape can enlarge and reduce along a path, but it's a completely different operation that I'm not going to be able to show you today. The best thing that I can really show you is that a motion tween is done with symbols, and I'll create another layer, and a shape tween is done with shapes. Okay, so now I'll take this layer and I'll type in, turn this bigger, FLASH, the color has to be dark. Okay, and then that font is just too boring to even deal with. So let's make it at least something a little bit more interesting, and maybe make it 70. Okay, so this is going to become a shape. I'm going to do something that I showed you last week. I select it and I go Control or Command B for break apart. Now they're individual letters. I go Control or Command B again to turn them into simple shapes. Now what I can do is I can have those letters can now shape tween. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take those letters, I'm going to move them out to frame 40. I'm going to go back to frame 1, and I'm just going to have a star. Oh, not that. I'm going to have a star without a stroke and make it greenish. And I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and now watch what I can do. I can create a shape tween, which essentially does that. I take this set of shapes, I convert them to that set of shapes by selecting, right-clicking, and choosing Create Shape Tween. But with the ball, which is already a symbol, I can right-click and say Create Motion Tween and move that ball to here, and I'm really done. The ball's already done. So symbols can motion tween. Shapes can shape tween. There are 3 different types of symbols. There's a movie clip symbol, there's a graphic symbol, and there is a button symbol. The graphic symbol is the least flexible, but it does have some features as I showed you earlier. The button symbol is what we use for interactivity, which we'll see a little later in the class, the semester. And the movie clip symbol is the object that has the greatest flexibility, and it is really easy to do stuff with. You can put filters on it. You can attach motion presets to it. So very quickly, I can end up with something like that. On top, we see a shape tween being done to shapes. On the bottom, we see a motion tween being done to one symbol type. Okay? What you need to do is, with what we've seen here and what is covered in Chapter 3, putting those 2 elements together will make all of this make great sense to you. Because I kind of cover, kind of more advanced elements of some of the things that the book will cover very simplistically. Now, the problem is if you hadn't read the chapter yet, it will seem confusing. But if you once you read the chapter, or if you have already read the chapter, this will actually make a lot of sense to you. Okay? The homework for next week. Great news, ladies and gentlemen. The homework for next week should be related to Flash, not Dreamweaver. The great news about the homework for next week is you are just going to watch the video on creating looping graphic symbols right here. It's going to talk to you about what I just showed you in class. Okay? And then you're also going to read Lesson 3 and complete the self-study and review. By midnight tonight, you will need to make sure to turn in your first homework static Flash file. But for next week, all you really need to do is watch this great little movie I made and complete the Lesson 3 chapter, which is going to essentially solidify all of the things that we covered in the lecture today. Are there any questions about that? Anna, that would be great. If you wanna, I highly encourage you to redo and resubmit your first static Flash file. It's great to practice it, and same file name would be fine. I'll just pick up the one with the latest entry point. Okay, so that's fine. I'm not going to grade that till tomorrow. Any other questions? My pleasure. Under Windows, in my programs, there is no Arrange tile. I'm not sure what you mean, Arrange tile. Where are you being told to arrange tile? To view two files side by side. Normally in Flash, you don't do that. I don't think there is that option. There's no option in Flash to tile two stages next to each other. Okay. Anything else, folks? No? There's a bunch of knots. Okay. Last question for tonight that I have for you. Yeah, it is interesting, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So, if my speed was too fast, I want you to give me the confusion face. If the speed was right, I will take the smiley face. And don't worry about hurting my feelings. I want to always adjust these things for you guys. Okay, good. So I saw lots of smiley faces. If there is anything that does confuse you after you try it for a while, shoot me an email or see me during my office hours. I do have office hours tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So I'm happy to meet with you then. Otherwise, thank you very much. I really enjoy having people in the room when I'm lecturing. Hope to see you again next week. Bye-bye.